Hello there, my name is Salim Javed and I'm an assistant professor and my passion is to teach cinema. We have been producing a series which is called Understanding Cinema, where we have tried to understand the journey of cinema so far, how it started, what development it has faced and how it has come into existence the way we see cinema today. Now, if you remember, we have been talking about globalization and corporatization of Indian cinema, and especially Hindi cinema in last few videos. And you must be remembering that by 2001, the Indian film industry was accorded industry status by the government of India, and the institutional financing came into the system. We also talked about liberalization, what is liberalization, why it was important. Then we also talked about globalization, hybridization, localization, Bollywoodization, good things about globalization, not so good things about globalization, foreign studios, how through corporatization and globalization they got an entry in Indian filmmaking industry, then how Indian studios reacted against that and how they flourished. And then we also talked about high domestic ticket price, why it is called a risky business, whether it is a risky business or not. Then we talked about lackluster content and less number of success. Now, we have been talking about all these things. Now, to understand globalization or liberalization, we must understand what kind of films we started producing after the introduction of these things, whether it brought any change in the way we were making films, or we took a shift, was there an obvious shift from the kind of cinema we were making in 90s and the kind of cinema we started making 2000 onwards. This is what we are going to discuss in this lecture. In this lecture, and there is a very interesting thing I was reading yesterday, and I wrote it on my board. It says from lackluster to blockbuster. Now, this is something very interesting. Actually, this is something that I'm thinking of working on, because what do you call a lackluster content? I mean, people make films, they try to make it blockbuster, but do they start with the material which is required for blockbuster, or why it turned into lackluster? Now, in this video, we will understand how from 2000 to almost 2020, how cinema was changing because of these things. We will understand the concept of globalization and corporatization through these films. Now, in year 2000, these are some of the big films that were popular in year 2000. First was Mohabbatein, then Kal Kaho Na Pyar Hai, Mission Kashmir, Dulhan Hum Le Jayenge, Refugee, Josh, Har Dil Jo Pyar Karega, Fiza, then Hamara Dil Aapke Paas Hai, and Mela. I'm sure all of you must have seen Mela, but I mean, on television, on Sony Max, you keep on seeing Mela again and again. But what was interesting about year 2000 was there was a very interesting film called Hera Pheri, which was made by Priyadarshan, Pukar, and many people like Bichu also. Now, if you look at all these films, now take an example of Mohabbatein. It's a story, it's a love story, obviously, set up in a school, and it has got its own turns and twists and everything. Mission Kashmir talks about a certain problem. Dulhan Hum Le Jayenge is a comedy rom-com. Refugee, again, it was the first film of Abhishek. It was directed by J.P. Datta on a very big scale because of border and everything. Then you have Josh, very different sort of a film. Now, if you observe all these films, now there is something called mounting in cinema. Mounting means how do you mount your story? Like suppose if you take a school. Now, when you go to a school can be like Stanley Ka Dabba also. School can be like Tare Zameen Pe also. But if you think of Mohabbatein, that school is very different. That is slightly imaginary sort of in a school, which actually directors started using quite a lot after, like in different films like Main Hoon Na, and a lot of other things, Students of the Year. So the genesis is from here. That sort of a school where there are freebies, where people are more touched up, they are glossy and everything. So it was basically, now we started, like suppose if you say we started catering for overseas cinema, we started catering to overseas audience. Yes, we started catering to overseas audience, and that started reflecting in our films. Like if you look at year 2001, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, then you have Ghadar, then you have Lagan, one of our official entries to Oscars. Then you have Indian, Dil Chahta Hai, Chori Chori Chupke Chupke. Now, Chori Chori Chupke Chupke, if you remember, I talked about the money which was entered in the film channel from in from backdoor, and a lot of other things I also talked about. And then you have Yadein, you have Lajja, then you have Jodi Number One, and other cinema that I'll talk about just in a while. Now look at these two films which you can see. One is Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, and the other is Dil Chahta Hai. Now these again are, this Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham is absolutely the Indian values, at its height. You have all anything that you think of Bollywood, it's all here. Shava Shava, I mean, there was a trend called Shava Shava, it's all here. Then you have Dil Chahta Hai. Now this film, Dil Chahta, is comparatively far more important than other films. Obviously, we have Lagan also. Lagan is like, we are talking about year 2001. Lagan was our official entry, and it was like, lot of people loved it. Ghadar was also, I mean, there was a tussle between Ghadar and Lagan, and a lot of things were happening. So this year you have three very amazing films. One is Ghadar, Lagan, and Dil Chahta Hai. Obviously, Indian was also hit. Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham is, shower shower trend started. So all the marriages, all the songs that you see is from this only, where people come and arrange. They practice for dance and everything. So the Bollywoodization of weddings, Indian weddings, so the trend starts from here. Now, this is what cinema, this is what we need to understand about cinema, that cinema does not exist in isolation. Now, there is a debate whether cinema affects society or society affects cinema. Now, in my point of view, it's a very circular argument, because the first film, when we made our first film, we took it from society. Okay, so the story came from society. The first feature film, Raja Harishchandra, 1913, it was existing it was there in the air, it was in our blood, it was running in our blood. So we started taking first from society, and then we started carving out images in society. So it's sort of a circular argument, whether cinema influenced films or films influenced cinema. Both the parties have got their own arguments, but according to me, it's a very circular argument. Now, if you look at Dil Chahta Hai, it was directed by Farhan Akhtar, first film of Farhan Akhtar. Now, I distinctly remember I was in college in 2001, and I knew what effect it had on us. Like I remember that everybody had this goatee. They started having this goatee, and then suddenly there were spikes in the hair, in the hair, and spikes were in the air also, technically speaking. So I directly saw influence of a film on society in this particular case. I may not got very much connected to Shawa Shawa at that point of time, because that depends on my age and my background. But Dil Chahta Hai was something where there are three friends. Now, if you are in college, you have friends, and the film was about the journey of three friends, how they have fun together, how they go to college together, how they mature together. Now, understand that the kind of cinema that I will talk about, 2000 onwards. Now, there is no space for Do Biga Zameen, there is no space for Do Aankhein Bara Haath. Now there is the rich person is no more the villain, and suddenly a common man is fading away from the films. Now you have rich kids from very good families becoming protagonists. Now there is no Salam Bombay now onwards. You have it. It's not that you do not have it, but even the projection changes. Now you do not have Parinda for that matter, where the brother is killed and he tries to take the revenge. Now look at the films 2000 onwards, how globalization and corporatization is changing our protagonist. Now, Dil Chahta Hai, if you have seen Dil Chahta Hai, I'm sure all of you must have seen Dil Chahta Hai. All the three friends do not have to worry about from where they will earn. Now, they are not worried about unemployment. They are not worried about what will happen to their sister. They will not worried about how their mother will be treated, and they are not worried about what will happen tomorrow. Now, all they are worried about, because to bring you in the celebration of a family function, you have to cut your character from everywhere. So he has to literally focus on family values, and he or she should go to Goa and enjoy. Dil Chahta Hai exactly showed audience that only. Now Lagan takes a very wonderful take on that. If we start playing match, if we are put against a colonizer team, can we win or not? So this is all about that. Then Gadar plays on a pure emotion of two nations and made beautifully. There is no doubt about it. But Lagan was able to attract more international attention. Chori Chori Chupke Chupke, Bharat Shah case. If you remember that I talked about Bharat Shah case. So this was the film where, now please understand, now we are getting into institutional financing and everything. So the involvement of underworld is fading away. Chori Chori Chupke Chupke is just one pure example of that. Then you have Yadein, where like the best part about Yadein is that there is in-film advertising. If you remember, Coca-Cola was one of the sponsors of this film Yadein, which was made by Subhash Ghai. Now, what happens here? Now, during all these, that when I'm talking about films from 2000 onwards, I will also talk about one very interesting category. Now, these are the films which were super hit in that year. Below that, I'm keeping some films which were unexpectedly, huge success. Now, this will give birth to a new category as we start moving. Now, Chandni Bar it secured national award for Madhur Bhandarkar. Then I'm sure many of you are still listening to songs of Tum Bin. Then you have Style. It was just one-time miracle. Style was one-time miracle by N. Chandra, and it was fun watching this film. Now then you have Zubaida, made by Shyam Benegal. Now I have a special reservation for this particular film, and because I have been following the cinema of Shyam Benegal. But when I saw Zubaida, it was a kind of a surprise for me. But it was a beautiful surprise, to be very honest, because a certain kind of cinema works in a certain time frame. But if you really want to stay relevant in the changing times, Shyam Benegal's Zubaida is one of the beautiful examples to study. How you see Suraj Ka Satwa Ghoda, from there you see Zubaida and the films in between, and you see a shift in his directorial arc, and that's the beauty of Shyam Benegal. So not only big films were making big money, there was certain category of films which was very not very high on its budget, but they were making big money. Now, year 2002 have Devdas. Now, I mean everybody knows about Devdas, but Sanjay Leela Bhansali took Devdas in his own style. Then you have Sanjay Gupta's Kaante. I still remember a few days back I was reading an article where Quentin Tarantino says that one of the best adaptation of Reservoir Dog is Kaante. That sort of a film. It was highly stylized film, very westernized, but very rooted in Indian values. Then you have Raz, Hum Tumhare Hain Sanam. Then Aankhein. Aankhein was a pure surprise, and it really changed Vipul's style of filmmaking, and it was wonderful to watch this particular film. Mujhse Dosti Karoge, Hamraz was actually a sleek film. Then you have Sathiya. Now, this particular film, Sathiya, is very important in a sense. Yashraj was, in this particular year, Yashraj was going through a financial disaster. Two of their films actually did not work on box office, and Sathiya was a saver for Yashraj, which was directed by Shad Ali. Then you have Awara Pagal Divana. Then you have Company, one of the standard films that if you really want to know about Ram Gopal Verma, then you have Satya, you have Bhoot, all these films. But Company is also one very good film that one can see. Now, Divangi is Anis Bazmi's film. I mean, I really sometimes wonder that because Anis Bazmi is still like I'm talking about 2002, Anis Bazmi is somewhere in 2020 also, he is in 2022 also, 2023 also. So think of Anis Bazmi, making films for such a long time. He is like, I don't know whether people value him or much. I really value him because he has been able to secure finance for his film for last at least last 2 decades. Now, Makadi's was a surprise in year 2002. Now, Makadi, which was directed by Vishal Bhardwaj, it was his director debut also. Now, he actually made it for Children Film Society of India. Then there is a story how they acquired film, and there is a story then how they released the film. But Makadi was a surprise. Now, look at, like, sometimes we complain that there are no good films as far as Children Film Society is concerned. Makadi was a very good project which initially Children Film Society of India financed, and it was wonderful. Now, then 2003 you have Kal Ho Na Ho, Koi Mil Gaya, The Hero, Chalte Chalte. Now look at the list of these films. Koi Kal Ho Na Ho. Now there is a rich protagonist. Koi Mil Gaya, he doesn't have to worry about how his life will be taken care of. Everything is fine. Hero is about a spy. Chalte Chalte, again the same thing. Bhagwan was a surprise. मैं प्रेम की दीवानी हूँ. It was like fine, again hero doesn't have to worry about anything. Surprised by Munna Bhai MBBS, and LOC Kargil was there, Andaz was there, Qayamat was there. Now look at all this, look at these two particular films in this Bhagwan. I still remember there was no parent in India who has not made his son and daughter see this film. It was a kind of it was a kind of a catharsis, for Indian parents when they saw Bhagwan, and it was like one of the biggest films of that year. And another surprise, Munna Bhai MBBS was a gust of fresh air. Now look at the way we have been transforming from 90s now. What kind of cinema we were making in 90s, a departure, a stark departure from 80s, the kind of cinema we started making in 90s. And look at when you have institutional financing, your stories are also changing. It's not that you are not continuing like LOC Kargil is like border and all these films from border type film. It's not that JB Datta is not making film, but you will see that JB Datta will gradually fade out because there is a new aspiration, like Dil Chahta Hai. People want to see Dil Chahta Hai. People want to see Devdas, that sort of films. Now, Munna Bhai MBBS, if you see, it was absolutely fantastic film, which was a very different take on how should the discipline of medicine should work. And these kinds sort of stories like Ek Doctor Ki Maut, or all these films, or I distinctly remember Dr. Kotnis Amar Prem Kahani. These are the two films before Munna Bhai MBBS that I can think of has something to do with the job of doctor. But Munna Bhai was a brilliant, fresh take on medical profession. Then again, there were small, look at these small budget films which are like they have started making their space. Jism, Ganga Jal, Bhoot. I still remember that I saw this film in cinema hall in PVR Saket, and I still remember it, and it's purely a spooky film. I distinctly remember that it was very difficult, obviously entertaining. It's not that, but my God, I still remember that how I sat through the entire duration. It was a wonderful film. Then you have Hasil. Now, if you have not seen Hasil from 2003, I would suggest that you must see it. Think Mahanshu Dhulia, obviously there are other actors, Irfan Khan and everybody else. They have done a wonderful job. Now Hasil is a wonderful example of how our stories gradually shifting to small towns. They are shifting to UP, they are shifting to Bihar, they are shifting, they are not only cosmopolitan centric, or they are not just only shooting abroad and all these things. Now, Ishq Vishk was absolutely by Kane Ghosh, was like as if a new star has arrived. Tere Naam, who is there who has not kept that particular style of Salman Khan? Now, look at this, understand all these films, how they are gradually shifting from the kind of cinema we were seeing, and how they are very silently taking you to a very different mindset. Now, year 2004, obviously, the romantic film Veer Zara is there. Main Hoon Na, again, I was talking about the school, that particular school where you have chiffon ka dupatta on a teacher, and she's moving and wind is blowing, and all that imagination possible. Anything that you think of Bollywood, it is all again there. Then you have Dhoom, obviously, a new sort of a film where you have motorbike race and everything. Then Mujhse Shaadi Karogi, all these films. Khaki was wonderful film. Hum Tum was absolutely a fresh take, where they are living abroad, where they are not worried about the kind of values that we through our cinema were projecting. It was absolutely a different take, where only two individuals exist, and it is all about them. It's all about their priorities. It's all about what they care about. It is all about how do they think of that particular situation they are in. Swadesh was a wonderful departure for Shah Rukh Khan from being Shah Rukh Khan. And it was, yes, I was saying Lagan because Ashutosh Gwarkar was the director of Lagan, and then you have Swadesh. Ashutosh Gwarkar was the director of Swadesh. It's a beautiful, subtle film about a scientist who is working for a different country's space organization. Due to some reasons, he come back, he goes through everything. There are very subtle jokes also. He gets into some very personal, very close to him issue. Then he leaves. Then what he decides, for that you must see. Now again, it's basically again Indian diaspora, that the protagonist is doing very well abroad. Okay, so again catering not only to Indian diaspora, but also tapping on people, those who are staying in India and they have decided not to stay abroad. So it is basically tapping both the categories here. Now you have Murder, like it created sensation. It was about sensuality. It was about morality. There was a lot of debate on this film. People still listen to its songs. Then you have Halchal, you have Etraz, Murder and Etraz on the theme of sensuality. And then you have Ab Tak Chhappan, made by Shimit Amin, fantastic film. Then you have one-time blockbuster Masti. Then you have Lakshya, again beautiful film after Dil Chahta Hai by Farhan Akhtar. Then you have Chameli. Chameli was something which was very, very interesting. Rituparnu's Ghosh Raincoat. My God, look, I mean, you must see what it has given to Indian cinema. Then you have Mani Ratnam's Yuva. It was a big film, and it is now look at all these films like Yuva, Raincoat, Chameli, Lakshya, Masti, Ab Tak Chappan. All these films. Now, this category will be very prominent when we're talking about cinema of 2010 onwards. This will become a major category where limited, like Ab Tak Chappan had a very limited budget. Lakshya, obviously, Farhan had good budget. Sudhir Mishra, Chameli, Kareena Kapoor. You must see this particular film. Raincoat is absolutely a visual treat, and Yuva is something that I still like today. That energy, that agility, that freshness, that rawness, it is all there in all these films. Thank you very much.